So, in this session, I'm talking about the marathon. Now, it's the London Marathon today. We're recording this on the 2nd of October 2022. London Marathon today. The marathon's already started. All the runners are now either finishing and completing or, halfway through or wherever they are in London. And it's fantastic that so many people take part in this, this institution, the London Marathon. But I want to talk about marathons in general and what we can sort of learn from the concept of marathons. And you might have heard the saying, life is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So life is a marathon, it is not a sprint. Now there's lots of arguments on the internet and on the Google to tell us who said that first or who invented it and what it actually means. You might have a saying for yourself like that, you might have that saying. Life is a marathon, it's not a sprint, and it'd be interesting to know what your definition of that is. I'm going to give you my take on what I think that means for personal development, and I'm going to do my usual 5 things on the marathon. So let's do number 1. Number 1 is that basically running a marathon, you can't just do it like that. You can't just switch it on. You can't just fill in a form. You go to the marathon and you run 26.2 miles and just do it overnight. You can't do it. I suppose it's a marathon, not a sprint, talks about that, doesn't it? Or links to that. So for example, I think people, launch into goals and whatever you want to call them, outcomes and projects, and they launch into them expecting the results to be instant. Well, of course, that's not true. And tip number 1 is all about thinking about how you're going to plan for that marathon. So as I said, we're now recording this in October. We've got October, November and December, 3 months, which is a great period to do a project. Michael Hebel calls it a massive action project. Think about one project that you could really plan well and review as you're going along. And I'm going to do a session about reviewing later on if you want to catch me doing that, or if you want to know more about my review session, give me a little DM or an email or whatever, and I'll send it on to you and show you where the links are. But why don't we take the opportunity to have a marathon now for the next 3 months and focus on one thing that you're going to get done, by the end of your marathon. So break it down, break that down. When people go and run the marathon, they don't go, right, I'm going to run 26.2 miles today. Now, they might towards the end of the marathon, and they don't train, and they don't do that all the time. But what they do is they have little increment steps towards running the marathon. So they know they're going to have to run 26.2 miles, but on week 1 of training, they can't do that. They might start with 1 mile, or half a mile, or a quarter of a mile, or 10 steps. They take it right back and they chunk it down. You might have heard that saying, chunking up, which is getting to the bigger, or chunking down, getting to the smaller. So as I said earlier, we've got 3 months now. So on average, 3 months is 4 weeks of the month, 12 weeks. Go from right at the end of what you're planning. So maybe here is the marathon, and plan backwards. Plan backwards in weeks perhaps to what you want to start with. And as you start and you get week 1, you get week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5, week 6, week 7, week 8, week 9, 10, 12, you then get to what you want at the end of your marathon. So that's the first thing. Think about the length and time it takes to train for a marathon. And why do people sometimes fail or stop what they start? It's good old New Year's resolutions syndrome. Basically, they come with all these ideas and they launch into it, and boom, their energy goes, their intention goes, the reason why they wanted to do it goes. So think about that for tip number 1 when we're talking about marathons. You really need to plan your marathon. Okay, tip number 2, I'm going to talk about sprints, because we know that sometimes you need to do sprints. Michael Heppel in his book 17 talks about 17-minute sprints. Doing a flurry of activity in a set period of time gets things done. I personally have 25-minute sprints, and I use something called the Pomodoro technique. 25 minutes sprint, 5 minutes sort of rest, recuperation, 25 minutes. And that's how I get things done. So on a Sunday morning, as part of my weekly sort of review, I have a 25-minute desktop house clean sprint where I basically say to Alexa, Alexa, set a 25-minute timer, and I've got 25 minutes to rush around the house, put everything away, wipe the tops while the coffee pot's on, and it's done on a Sunday morning. And that is a sprint, a focused block of time and activity. And I think that the thing with sprints is you can't keep doing sprints all the time. So sprint, 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 sprint. You will lose energy, you'll lose motivation, your mojo will disappear, you become tired, you'll resent them. So try and put things into little sprints. And the best thing for this type is your stuff. Your things like your stuff. So I have, again, in my productivity system or my daily planning, doesn't matter what it's called, I try and have email sprints. So I only have 3 a day. One, sort of when I've settled in the morning, I've got my coffee, computer's on, desk tidy, I've got my 5 things I want to do for that day. I have a 25-minute email sprint where I get my email back to something called Zero. And I'm talking loads of productivity things thrown in. I'll talk about all these at other times if you want. But I get my email box back to Zero. I have another one of those in mid sort of morning, and then one towards the end of work. So my email doesn't build up. And that is definitely a sprint. So think about that. What about number 3? Tip number 3. Well, if you think about all those marathon runners that are running today, what are they doing? They're running to complete a marathon in whatever time to get to that end point. That, you know, that finish line where it's got finish. Now, some of them get there, don't they? You see them, bless them, you watch them on the TV, struggling, crawling to the end. Or some of them running through, you know, those professional runners that sort of smash it through that tape and get to the end. But each and every one of those marathon runners have got in their head the end in mind, that finish goal. And remember when I talked about in tip 1, I talked about, down here, wasn't it? I talked about knowing exactly what that finish goal is. So you can plan and plan and plan and plan and plan. You must know what your starting point is, and you must know, more importantly, what your finish point is. And that, try and keep that specific. We've heard about SMART goals already. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. It's a framework that's okay, but I think it's a framework. It's worth, you know, if you get it in your head, it's good to be able to plan, you know, what you want. So, and stating it in the positive as well. So it is December the 31st and I weigh 12.5 stone. It is December the 31st and I have learned to make 12 new Mexican dishes. It is December the 31st and I have written and published a book. It is December the 31st and I can now walk 5 miles without stopping and not taking a breath. You need to take a breath without stopping, okay? Because see what I'm doing there? It's a SMART goal, it's timely, it's got a date in, it's specific. And I think also to ask why. So why do I want to walk 5 miles without stopping? Because I need to feel healthy. I want to get out I enjoy the outside. I enjoy being with people when I'm walking. It's a great hobby. Why do I want to write a book? I want to share my knowledge and my abilities and my skills or my story with people. I want to help people to learn from me and then not make the mistakes and challenges that I had, etc., etc. What is your why? So number 3 is really knowing your why and stating that intention at the start before you run at that marathon. Also, keep reminding yourself all the way through your marathon why you're doing it, what the end goal is. Put emotion into your end goal. I've always said it, emotion creates motion, motion creates emotion. It's a circle. It's a flywheel circle. You put emotion in, you put that charge in, and you take action. You can't just think about things. In fact, yesterday I saw a sign actually in Nottingham. It was the worst sign in the world. It said, and it literally said this, folks, think yourself thin. Well, okay, I'm going to sit here for the next 5 years and think myself thin while eating donuts. It's not going to happen, is it? I think that shop, it was a shop that was advertising therapies and hypnosis, I think, and other things. And I thought it was shocking. And I actually was going to take a picture and put it on Twitter. And then I thought, no, that's their thing, not mine. But think yourself thin. That's incredible, isn't it? You've got to take action. So back to number 3, your intention. You know what the goal is. You're putting emotion, you're putting passion. You know, I'm getting quite passionate. You can see me, can't you? My shoulders and my hands. I'm trying to stop moving my hands around, but I'm putting emotion into this because I really believe it, and I'm hoping that you're going to put the emotion into what I'm saying. So that's number 3. Number 4 then. Number 4 is help. Get help. You see the marathon runners, don't you? You see them running down and getting the marathon. There's people offering them a glass of water. Or a cold something or other, or something to put on their heads or whatever, and they grab it quickly. And I think, you know, they really appreciate those people, you know, offering them a juice or an orange or a glass of water to keep them going. And then there's the crowd clapping, and every time somebody goes past, they clap and applaud and keep them going and give them lots of encouragement. But there's also lots of people, for tip number 4, behind those marathon runners, their families, their friends. You know, that they've said to their families and friends, you know, I'm going to do a marathon and I'm going to raise money and I'm going to do this for my spirit. Can you help me? And you know what? I think when you look at all those marathon runners, you have to think who's behind them and what's behind them and who has been encouraging them and who they've said, can you help me please do that? Can you help me run my marathon? Whatever that much might be. So your marathon, we've talked about maybe your 3-month project or what you're working on. Have you thought about the people around you, and you could ask them for their help? What about in this group? What about while you're watching this? What about me? Why don't you DM me and ask me? And I'll answer. If I can't help you, I'll tell you I can't help you, but I might know someone who can and put you in that direction. Or I might have read a book and thought, oh, you might want to read this book, or you want to try this technique. Ask for people along the way to help you in your marathon, and think about, you know, all those sort of steps that we talked about along in your marathon, who you could help and who you could have helping you along the way. Hope you're enjoying this. So we've done 4 tips so far on marathons and sprinting, haven't we? Number 1 was about planning, and really, when you're going to launch into something, think about it and the steps that you're going to launch into. Number 2 was how to use sprints really effectively to get stuff done. Sprints are great for getting the stuff done. Number 3, of course, was keeping that end goal in mind and having that intention. And number 4 was about having, you know, help along the way. Think about who can help you. And the last one, tip number 5. Tip number 5 is always the one I like to put in any 5 tips if I can. And that is enjoy the journey. Enjoy the race. Enjoy it. You know, make it you ready for this? A fun run. That's right. Make your marathon a fun run. Make your goal setting and achieving a fun run. How are you going to have fun doing what you're doing? How are you going to put joy into what you do? I like to, when I use the word enjoy, it's what you're going to injecting joy into what you do. So think about those you know, things that you want to achieve and what we started off in your marathons. You know, my 25-minute sprints, I actually really enjoy them. I put music on usually, or you know, I subscribe to podcasts and various things, and I put one on, busy around the house, tidy it up, and it's joyous. And then what I do to celebrate that joy is I just take a step back and think, wow, Steve, 25 minutes, brilliant sprint there, just got the house clean, have a nice cup of coffee and go on the internet and look at positive stuff, or be here in the group and chat and make videos. You know, how do you put the joy into it? So that's my discussion about marathons. You know, enjoy marathon. You know, life is a marathon and not a sprint. We've talked about, you know, planning. Sprints help you along the way, focusing in on the end goal, getting people around you to help, and lastly, put the fun in, put the joy in. share it, and celebrate it with others. I hope you really enjoyed that session and got some things from it. If you did learn something today, pop that down in the chat or the comments. If you've got your own ideas and you want to share with others, make sure you pop that in the chat as well, so people can benefit from your wisdom and your ideas and your thoughts and feelings. That would be great. Just pop them down below.